The main agenda here is to look through the various screens inside Forceboard app and walk through each one of those. And there are 4 main screens today. We're going to add some more in the future, but today it's 4 main screens: the feed screen, routine selection and workout screen, profile, and then the settings screen. The feed screen really gives you your history of every single workout session. The select routine is a list of all the routines that you have and lets you execute and go through the do session and actually perform those routines. The profile has your ledger chart, assessments, and leaderboards, and then all the settings, of course, are in the settings folder. So just dropping right in, the feed screen, probably most people are familiar with this, but each block with in this case, this is my profile, but each block that I have there is an entire session. Each color is a hold. And if you're a fitness person, each color hold can stand for an isometric position that you're holding. If you're a climber, we tend to think of holds as grips on a hangboard. The shades are sets and the bars are reps. And if you played with this at all, you can tap on those things and get, in this case, a max view. Or if you go cycle through this little button here, you can tap on this thing and see what your rate of force development was for every single rep. You can look at the average for every rep or the time duration that you did for each rep. One of the confusing things that's new that we invented for this Forceboard is the load seconds there. And we invented it. So it's a measure of kind of volume for your session. So for each rep, we're taking the average force for that rep multiplied times the time for that rep, and then summing all those together for your entire workout. And I really like it because it's a simple metric for seeing what your volume was for that given workout. And in this case, we're looking at this overcoming isometric workout that I did. So I did 19,000 load seconds, and by itself, that number is meaningless. But relative to the previous one, I did 23,000. In the previous session, I did 17,000 in the session before that, and then 19,000. So it's like one number to give me a sense of what my overall volume was for that particular workout. Then if you wish, you can drill down into the details by tapping on the header of this guy and see this is the session details screen. And you can see some of we have a summary of this workout, how many pulls I did, how many seconds it was, the load seconds, hold, sets, and reps, and then a chart for each hold. So as I have this first hold that I have is a left hand, single hand pull on a 20 millimeter edge. You can see what my target was for that, and then the chart down below. And you can by swiping left or right, you can cycle through each hold in this exercise. And if you're doing full body workouts, these might be something different. I'll go into those in a little bit later, but this could be an isometric hold doing a deadlift, for example. The chart down below shows how many sets I did for this hold, in this case 3. RPE is rate of perceived exertion. So this is how much effort I perceived to have on this. And one other thing, right now it's smiley faces. In the next release, we're going to do the scale, a 0 to 10 scale for RPE. So that's going to be more understandable to people, I think. And then the chart below is kind of a summary chart looking at all the sets. And in this case, the solid bar is the average for all the reps in that set. So the blue line you can see at the top is the average for all the sets in that third set. And then the blue dotted line is the last rep. So it kind of gives you solid bar as an average and then shows you your last rep. So if you're fatiguing, your last rep is going to be below what your average was. And that's the case here as well. And if you swipe left on this, then you can drill down into look at set number 1. I had 5 reps in this and it showed you each one of those 5 reps. Here's set 2. And set 3. So there's a lot of detail in this screen, which is why we called it the session details screen. You can also delete that session if you wish, and then you can look at notes that you might have captured. The next release you can edit the notes here if you wish to. So we're making that slight improvement. And I can flip through, I showed just a couple, but I can flip through every single hold I did for this particular routine by swiping left and right. So that's the feed screen and the session details. Go on to the next section, which is the workout routines. So there's really 3 sections in this screen. There's my routines. These are all the different routines that I have edited or authored in the time that I've been using it. And we'll go in to edit those guys just a little bit. There's the assessment routines and tools. So this has quick start, engage mode, and I'll talk about those. We'll actually do a demo of those. The peak force assessments. and then our templates. And the templates are just a starting point. They're canned routines that you can start at to get going. If you want to do repeaters, well, 7-3 repeater is a really common way to do repeaters, for example. Or Eric Horst has his 753 max hangs in there as well. So you can borrow one of these and adapt it to your particular purposes. Going down one, for editing a routine, I'll edit this one that I was doing earlier. We were looking at the details on this. You've got name and description, and those can be anything you like. The objective down here is, you can choose strength or power objective. And that's nothing but just some metadata. It doesn't really have any impact on the device itself. And then down here, we've got how many holds you have, how many sets for each hold, how many reps for each set, number of seconds for a particular rep. Actually, this is not the right routine I wanted to look at. Sorry, I'm going to go back one screen. I wanted this overcoming isometric. How the duration, so 3 seconds long is going to be my rep time. 3 seconds is also the rest that I'm doing after a rep. So it's 3 on, 3 off, 50% duty cycle, work to rest ratio. And then I have quite a decent rest after each set, 120 seconds. Because a hold always ends on the end of a set, that's also the duration of rest between holds. Start stop threshold, probably you understand that, but if not, it is the force you have to pull against on the force gauge to have a reps trigger start. And it's the force that if you fall below that, the rep will stop. We're going to, by customer request, we're going to modify this just a little bit in the future so that your rep will last the entire duration, in this case, 3 seconds, even if I stop in between. So if I re-grip a hangboard or reset my isometric deadlift, I'm still continuing for that entire 3 seconds. So customers had some issues, had requests there, I should say. The log effort for each set, we have that turned off by default because it's kind of a pain, but that triggers at the end of a set. You can enter your RPE, your rate of perceived exertion. That's the edit screen. Fairly straightforward, I think. And then this is the choose hold screen. So let me drop one screen down in this. So here you can swipe back and forth again. Swipe back and choose a different hangboard or other equipment that you might have inside the system. In this case, I'm using the flash or the tension block on the 20 mil edge for that very first hold. Something that people may or may not know is you can actually customize the name of this hold. So if I don't like that particular name, I can call it full, maybe I'm calling this a chisel grip, and I'd call it 2-finger. So if the standard, the default name isn't the right thing for you, you can change the name to do whatever you want. By default, if you tap on one of these hold, double tap on any of the numbers, it will select that hold and do this. And you can also select a hold by tapping on something in this drop-down box, which shows you all of the holds and the sizes for each one for in any given hangboard. I'll cancel out of that. And then the last key thing is this, and this is a new feature we added in the last release. You can select different hand options. So the top one, both means, I didn't want to do it. Both means you're grabbing with 2 hands at the same time. Split reps means you do left hand, right hand, right hand. So in essence, every rep gets split between left and right. Split sets means you do, for each set, you go left, 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 right, 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 right. So you split the set between left and right hand. So the split reps are useful for one-hand max hangs, and the split sets are useful for one-hand repeaters. And then you can just for completeness, we included also a left and right only options. I suspect the top 3 are the ones that people will use the most. Probably both and split sets are the most useful. I'm going to cancel out of that and actually go back because I don't want to save this routine. That's the routine I already had set up, so I don't want to discard that. But so that's the edit screen and the choose hold screen. To execute a routine, I would just just tap it, and it lets me confirm my holds. And you can do some of the same stuff. You can split the reps or do this select hand options here, or you can change holds. And sometimes as climbers, you're like, I want to size down on this edge because I was so strong last time. Well, you can do it here without having to go in and edit the entire routine. You can also modify the target load, either using little plus minus buttons or just tap on it to select. If I want to say I'm going to do 120 pounds this time around, I can do that. You can choose different hangboards as well. And then the last thing that people may not be aware of is this hold history. So this, if you click on this little backwards clock icon at the top right, it shows you your past history or this hold on this particular workout. So there's one I did. This is an old routine. I only have one. Let's go back to my other routine that I wanted to do. I did this overcoming isometric, which I've done more recently. This shows then on May 7th, I did this one. On April 22nd, I did that one, and so on, going back in time. You can kind of get a look back and get a sense of where you were in order to know if you want to adjust what your target was or adjust any given rep. And I can see in this May 7th one, I'm above my target line most of the time, so maybe I should consider moving that target up. I'm going to start a session and kind of talk about the do session page a little bit. First, this pairing page. We are just a little bit different than some traditional Bluetooth devices. Bluetooth headphones, for example, you pair them permanently, you bond them to your phone, and inside your Bluetooth settings, you're going to get a list of paired devices and your headphones show up there. The ForceBoard is a Bluetooth low energy device, and the short for BLE is short for that. So BLE devices don't go through that process. They actually rely on the app itself to do the pairing. And so that's what's happening here. We don't kind of bond to the phone permanently, but we'll repair each time on that screen. Once in a while, we've had some issues with users on iPhones in particular, not being able to see that device when they first start. And what we found is that is a Bluetooth permissions issue. So if you run into that, that's what's happening, maybe what's happening there. I will say, if you haven't seen this, the device blinks blue if you are connected via Bluetooth. And you should see on the top right corner of the app here a little highlighted blue Bluetooth icon. So that's a good signal that you're connected via Bluetooth. And then when you pull on it, you should see data coming through. The hold on the very top, then target load, you can adjust your target load there. And you can also set it all at once. So if I want to just choose 55 pounds, I can change it there. As you go through this, if you have multiple holds, it'll cycle through each one. And then we have a sets and reps counter for each of those, for that hold. And down here, you've got max displayed. You can choose to display max, rate of force development, or average. I think the most interesting, we have average there for completeness, but I think the interesting ones are RFD or max. One thing that's cool about the ForceBoard is we're capturing RFD with every single rep you do. So if you want to train that, we are capturing it all the time without having to do an explicit routine. Then your data chart shows up there in the middle, along with some numbers for the previous rep. So if I do a rep here, so I just did this rep, and it drops off. You can see, and this is a demo thing, I wasn't pulling that hard, but RFD of 788, that's an uncalibrated device I'm using here right now. Max was 260 pounds and so on. The very bottom left, the green right pull, that's your current activity block. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then the next thing I'm going to do is that bottom right block that says left pull. I think this is a split rep exercise. So that's why you're seeing left pull, right pull happen one right after another. The blue dashed line is your target line. So if I move that guy back up to 100, you can see it bounces back. Oh, it will bounce back up as soon as I do the next pull. There, it's now set to 100. And yeah, that's the basics. We tried to keep this all on one screen and relatively simple. There's some details here, but overall, this is what we did, I guess. Any questions there before we go on?
Well, let me ask a question about you're setting your target. Now you've done, I guess we're going to go into doing a max hang test and then taking that value and say you want to shoot for 80% of that value on a repetitive exercise. I guess I have to look at that curve each time I'm pulling, or is the audible going to indicate that I've reached my target weight, basically?
Yeah, it's going to do two things. One, it's going to give you some, if my current curve is below 100 pounds in this case, the bar where it says RFD average, max, and current, that will be white. And if I go above that line, it'll turn green. And also the beeps that remind you of the second counters will be either low pitch if you're below or higher pitched if you're above the target. One thing we're working on right now is to do kind of percentages of max. Right now we have just a number in there for target, but we're working on adding some percentage of max into this so that you can say, okay, 100 pounds is my target, and it will track already for you whether you're above or below that threshold, or what percent below the threshold or above the threshold you are. So we're going to do that math for you.
Another thing on the audio real quick, if you tap that speaker button, that is a mute and unmute button. So if you want to turn off the audio or turn it back on, you can simply just tap that button within the workout.
Okay, I'm going to go back. You can choose to save the session and add your notes here. I'm going to not save it because this is just a test workout. And then I'm going to drop into assessments. Quick start. I'm just going to kind of go through these and then we'll move on. And now we're into quick start mode. So quick start has the start stop threshold there as well. So again, if I am below 25 pounds, it will not trigger a rep. If I'm above 25 pounds, it will start to trigger a rep. If I go below, it stops. Right now, the minimum you can do with this is 10 pounds, but we've had lots of people ask us to lower that, some physiologists in particular, physical therapists. So we're going to drop that threshold down so that you can do 2 or 3 pounds as a trigger to start and stop. The only reason for keeping that high is if you're going to be pulling 500 pounds, you may not want to trigger the rep at 10 pounds because you're setting up, getting ready to go. And you probably want to have, that higher thing. So if you start generating force, it doesn't accidentally trigger a rep. We are adding something else in the next release too to let you undo or repeat a previous rep. So if you do something by mistake and you're like, oh, that was a failure, we're going to let you bounce back and redo it if you want. Same thing here. I can set a target of 100 pounds. And the quick start's really cool because when I pull, it does a rep. When I stop, it does a rep. It stops a rep and then does an up counter in between and just completely ad hoc. So it's kind of a nice way to do ad hoc workouts or warm-ups. You can, something that people may not realize is you can increment that set counter. So if I wanted to do 2 or 3 reps for each set and do like 10 sets or something like that, you can do that. So there's 3 reps. I'm going to bounce that set counter again and then do the same thing. It gives me all the same data you had on that session screen, but if I click done and now save the session, that quick start routine shows up right there. And I had 2 reps in the first set. The second set was 3 reps. The third set was 2 reps. And the same session details we walked through already show up there. So it's handy. A lot of people really like the quick start, and I do too. Going back, one more mode is the gauge mode. This is just a real-time display of this system of what the weight is. So it's basically a Bluetooth crane scale. Nothing more fancy than that. You can do a tear on this. The device tears automatically. Tear is just reset to 0 force. The device automatically tears every time you turn it on. So we don't have a tear in other modes, but in case you're using this as a crane scale and you want to measure your fish, each one fish at a time at the dock, we put this tear in so you can normalize that force measurement. And one other thing we're going to modify that we've already done in the next release is instead of a 3-second average on this, we're going to actually do a max. So if you bounce up and measure some force and then drop to 0 again, we're going to let that max read out. So we're kind of storing the last max that you had on this gauge mode. So it's trying to keep this really simple here for somebody that's just getting going. And I think that's the main thing. Peak force assessments. These are just touching on the peak force assessment. It's the intent here is for rock climbers to understand how we can pull on a 20 millimeter edge. You can choose to do it with both hands, left hand or right hand. So you can do 1 hand or 2 hand assessments. Peak force is it's a single rep and you pull as hard as you can. So be sure you're warmed up. We kind of have this checkbox to say, I'm using a 20 millimeter edge because we want to have that data set be, as good as possible for doing that. We have a critical force, which is more of an endurance exercise to test your endurance. This is doing 7 seconds on, 3 seconds off for 5 straight minutes. It's horrible exercise. It's a good test of endurance, but it's emotionally painful. And I could go into this if you guys are interested. I have a little bit more data on this one in the assessment page. And then we talked about this already, but these are templates. They follow the same form. So if I'm interested in a max pull, you can click on Charlie Schreiber's peak force, 3-second peak force, and just kind of see what he recommends for that. And there's a pretty good description in there about when you would use that. That's the routines and the sessions and everything else. And we're nearing the end. I'll jump into the profile page last, and I'm going to start with assessments. We just talked about those a second ago. We have a lot of data that you can capture for assessment. So here's both hands, both left or right, and we're capturing that information. So there's peak force. I pulled 363 pounds, peak force with 2 hands on a 20 mil edge. My critical force, the last time I did it was 147 pounds. Body weight, you can see, and then we'll calculate those ratios for you. And then down below, we show a history chart of all those assessments. So here, peak force, I did 336, and then a few months later, I did 363 pounds, and I haven't redone it in here. I have gotten a little bit higher than that recently. Critical force, I only have one measurement in this one. I've done it before, but it's not in this under this user profile. Don't do this too often just because it's challenging, let's just say. This is the slides now, if you're looking at that slide. Critical force is really the ability of force generation for your aerobic energy system. So we're depleting all of the stored energy you have in your cells, and all you're left with is what you can continually regenerate with your aerobic system. So you can see it's 20 millimeter, 7-3 repeater for 5 straight minutes. And this chart kind of shows you what that looks like. So the peak force is 1 pull for 3 seconds. That's the very start of this curve. Critical force is after you've depleted all of the energy in your cells, what you can regenerate. So the stored energy is kind of like the green area under the curve is what stored energy means. And so that's what we're trying to represent with that data. For what it's worth, I train peak force, I train critical force. I think stored energy is a byproduct. I haven't worried too much about trying to train that, but it's data we had, so we put it inside the app. Profile page. We're on the profile page. So that's the assessment page. Then we have the leaderboard page, which shows you can look lots of different leaderboard choices. If I'm looking at, you can choose 2 hands, left hand or right hand, and you can choose peak force or peak to weight ratio, critical force or critical to weight ratio. If I look at that one, Ian Chavez is our top critical to weight ratio, pulling over 100%. That's really hard to do, to pull more than 100% of your body weight at critical force. So it's a fun metric to do for sure. Okay, so that's assessments and leaderboard page. Last one I'm going to do is kind of talk a bit about the ledger page. So some of the features on the ledger page, you need to be a pro user to access. And I'm going to try to convince you why that's useful. So you can choose, the ledger is kind of a easily visualized history for all of your workout data. It also lets you set goals for a given workout or a hold. And the goals are useful because if you can set a goal, you can stay motivated. And then seeing incremental progress towards that goal also helps you stay motivated. So I think this is a pretty useful page. So I can select any workout that I've done. I'll choose the same one that we've been doing demonstrations, as overcoming isometric 3x3x5. I'm looking at load seconds. That's that total volume metric, but I can also look at max. And I can look down here at max for my whole routine, but I think it's more useful to look at a max setting for a particular hold. So here's my 20 millimeter edge, max pull, and I set a goal of 125 pounds. And the latest is on the left-hand side of the chart, so May 7th. And then the older stuff is on the right-hand side of the chart. And we change the color if you achieve that goal. So if I say I want, my real goal is 150 pounds, I'd love to be able to get one hand 150 pounds. I'm not quite there yet on a max pull. So yeah, it just kind of gives you can set those goals and then look in one chart over on your progress towards those goals. And we let you set goals for everything. You can do for total volume for a given hold, max, rate of force, or even average. And to me, the load seconds is interesting from a overall routine perspective. Max and RFD, I think, are interesting for a given hold. And you can see my rate of force, other than one of those routines that was really bad rate of force, I was tired that day, it's generally been increasing over time. So I think that's definitely a good thing to train. Yeah, I think that the purpose for this page, and we put a lot of work into this one, is just to help you stay motivated in your training because you can see incremental progress towards those goals. Last page is just the settings page. And I'm not going to go into too much depth here other than to say equipment. So the way this system works is if you have a hangboard, you first link it to your account by clicking on that guy and choosing link. And now once it's in the My Equipment, like that Arete Climb bar, here it is up here. So the Arete Climb, I just linked it in here. Now I can get access to it when doing a workout. We made it that way just so, because we have 50, 60 hangboards inside the system, and I didn't want people to have to sort through all of those. So you can choose the one piece of equipment you have, or one or two, and be able to get quicker access to them. We have a settings in here for climbing grades. So you can choose, set your climbing grades. And we're not doing a whole lot with this right now, but in the future, we are going, in fact, the next release is going to start to expose some of this information and make sense of it for you, which I think is going to be pretty cool. And then you can do all other settings like put your body weight and your birth year. And we're going to make use of this stuff over time as well, which is why we've included it. Password, subscription, standard stuff, units of measurement, metric or US English units. And then the last one is really this device info screen that's useful. Humidity and temperature show up. by the way, in the next app release, that humidity and temperature will be available even when you're offline. So you can take it out to the crag and use it as a temperature reader if you'd like, temperature gauge if you'd like. And then you can do firmware updates here as well. And I think that is everything that I wanted to really cover. Let's ask any questions that you may have.
One question on RFD. It just seems like that is going to be dependent on how aggressive you go after a rep. The indication that you always go after every rep like as aggressive as you can, or only on routines you care about it. Can you just talk to RFD and how you would kind of care about it?
Absolutely. At first, let me show you how we're measuring. See if I can pull this up quickly. I'll show you how we're measuring RFD. One of the goals that we had with RFD was to be able to, because FinDeck is out there in the marketplace, and one of the things that they do, that you have a particular routine, an RFD measurement you can execute, but you have to go and do it, and then you measure your rate of force. And I wanted to do it a little bit differently, and that so we could capture rate of force for every single rep for every single routine. And in order to do that, we had to come up with an automated method for capturing rate of force. And that means really detecting the beginning of a rep. So I'm showing a chart here. What we chose to do is kind of this right-hand side. The question becomes, what's the beginning of a rep? Does it start down here when I go off 0 pounds or 1 pound, or when I really start to pull? What if I'm 10 pounds in before I really start to generate force? What should my RFD come from? So what we chose to do is we're capturing RFD over a 250 millisecond cycle, and we are gathering the steepest slope over the rise of your rep. We're basically looking at every 250 millisecond window over the rise and then capturing the steepest slope within that. Has turned out to be a pretty reliable way of measuring that particular metric. And I've had good luck with this. So if I pull harder, it shows a higher number. If I pull a little bit slower, it shows a slower number. And 250 milliseconds is a pretty accepted way of measuring RFD, but there's no real like industry standard way in the literature, at least that I was able to find. So we chose this method, and I think it's a pretty good one. It definitely captures what we're talking about, Phil, which is if I pull faster, I get a higher number. So let me answer your question now. So when should I try to pull on RFD or not? And I think if you're really going for a max force, I think you should not really worry about the RFD too much. Because if I want to load in for a second or two, a half second to a second, if I'm really going for something at a peak force, and if you think about, I'm go to the climbers for a second, that explosive power on grip strength, you need it when you're reaching up and you're grabbing a hold for the first time. And that may or may not be that max force that you're going after, but usually it's latching the hold. So where I personally prefer, and if anybody else has another opinion, I'd love to hear it, but I personally like to use RFD if I'm doing an overcoming isometric where I'm grabbing the fingers really fast. I'm keeping the rest of my body static, but I'm latching in with the fingers. So that's kind of a training my finger speed and the finger flexors rather than trying to train my full muscle, all my entire body to go after some max force. So I'll train RFD with a finger latch move and then train max force with something with this little bit slower entry into the rep. Yeah, I've been training this kind of something I think is an interesting Leaderboard protocol that I thought of myself, and that's kind of a combo rep where the first half of the rep, I'm using an overcoming isometric and pulling in essence, latching on the hold. And then the second half of the rep, I'm doing more of a yielding isometric where I'm going after a higher force generation. It's an intriguing concept that I've been experimenting with myself, and we may try to do a study on this also. But that's how I am watching it in that case, because I'm using that overcoming right off the bat and then going into a slower load for the yielding higher force.
Any other features you have on the horizon?
Yes, just a few. So these are a few things that we're adding in right now. That it's a release coming out soon. We're at the tail end of testing on this one. But adding some friends sharing, so you'll be able to, like similar to Strava, maybe not quite as full features, well, not as full featured as something like a mature app like Strava, but be able to have friends inside the system where you can see each other's routines or workouts, do sharing, and then even a remote coach view where coaches can view what their athletes are doing from afar. And then we're touching on a handful of other things like some of the thresholding values, calculating your percent of load for a given threshold value. So you can kind of see that and letting you do things like vary the number of reps in a given workout or for a given set. But this is there's a social aspect coming out in the next release. Okay, well, yeah, thank you guys all for joining. It's a pleasure. And if you have comments afterwards, our team at Pitch 6 is where you can email us and we'll do our best to respond.